Welcome once again to another edition of the Peaceful Solution Character Education Program Teacher Certification course. Thank you for the warm welcome. If you're joining us here in the auditorium at the Peaceful Solution headquarters, you can be seated. If you're joining us online, don't forget, at the top of the Facebook page, there's a drop-down menu. You can go down to the bottom book there, the Building Moral Excellence unit. That's what we're covering this evening. Let's see today. Yeah, we're in chapter 3, and we're learning about maintaining positive character. We're getting in the final phases of that chapter. And let's see. What I'd like to do, it's not, by the way, we're going to be picking up, I'm trying to remember the page number here. I think it's 135, if my memory's correct. Yeah, 135 is where we'll be picking up tonight. I'm going to be doing a slight review of what David had done in the last class. But before we get started tonight, let's go ahead and I do want to remind everyone once before I start the class. The next class is going to be postponed due to an event we're having here on Wednesday. So we won't have another class till Sunday at 5:30 p.m. Central Time. So for people that are watching online, don't be disturbed if we're not here. We're having another event that we need to attend to, so we'll pick up again on 1/5/2025 after tonight's class. So I'll try to remind you at the end of the class as well. All right, so we're going to be picking up on step number 11 on LP3F, if everyone wants to turn there. That's where David left off in the last class. And the instruction there says to explain to students that by maintaining a positive character, they will earn the reputation of being a person of integrity. And David did a pretty great job of explaining about reputation and how important a reputation is. And I also like the fact that he covered the fact that, people's reputation that some people tag on them isn't necessarily true. A lot of people get false accusations made about them because of who they are or what they represent. And so David did a fine job of covering that to help us to understand that, just because you hear about a person and they have a certain reputation tagged to them and it's negative, that's not necessarily the case. Okay, so we have to always remember, get the facts, make sure they're correct before you decide about anything or anyone. Okay, so in step 11, remember it says, by maintaining a positive character, will earn the reputation of being a person of integrity. Remember, a person of integrity is someone that follows all the moral character traits that we learn in the character unit on page, I believe it's 20. Remember all the positive character traits that we went over? They maintain those and they keep them, practice them on a consistent basis. They don't just one day, like tonight, I think we're going to see a certain motorcycle group that I think they call them Hell's Angels. They do charitable work, but then they sometimes run drugs and things like that. So it's kind of like, a mixed, we might call a mixed reputation. We'll talk about that, but okay. It says, have class turn to page 135, 136 in their handbooks and choose students to read the test or section entitled Your Reputation Precedes You and Straight Talk. Test class comprehension by asking students the following questions. And it gives us a couple questions here. Explain why maintaining a moral character results in a positive reputation. And some of your answers could be your reputation is a reflection of the choices you make about how you treat others and yourself. And a person's reputation can set the stage for whether they are accepted or rejected. Remember whether doors will be open for them or whether barriers will be put up to keep them from getting certain places because of their reputation. And I remember David mentioned in his class about how some people, they like to complain that man, you know, they always want me to do it. They always call me to do these jobs. And I'm thinking, you know, you should be thankful for that, because that must mean you do a great job or they wouldn't be calling you, you know? So, I mean, if we were slackers and we weren't doing a great job, our phone wouldn't be ringing and they wouldn't be asking us to do anything. That's when I'd be concerned, not because I'm being asked to do a lot of things. Okay, so it says B, why is it important to focus on maintaining a moral character even if others make fun of you? And it says compromising your moral character in order to be accepted or to have others not make fun of you will only lead to poor choices that could result in serious short and long-term consequences. Remember, we shouldn't follow the crowd in doing what's wrong just to be accepted, okay? We need to grow a backbone, be determined, stand firm on moral choices, be bold, be strong, maintain what you've learned in the peaceful solution, don't back down, don't compromise your moral character to fit in with anyone or any belief at all. Make sure that it always conforms to the right standard of conduct that you've learned in the peaceful solution program. So let's turn over to page 135, and we'll go through some of this. David said I'd probably be reviewing a little bit of it, and he was right. I do want to cover some of these things about reputation. So let's look at the first visual I have here for everyone, where it says, your reputation precedes you. It says, have you ever been introduced to someone and his or her first comment to you was, I've heard a lot about you? You know, your first thought might be, well, who's been gossiping about me? Right? Does it make you a little nervous when you hear that? Do you wonder what the person has heard? And remember, like David said, it could be lies that were spread about you. Or it could be embellishments about you, you know, about how great a person you are when actually you don't have that great of a reputation. You know, it just depends on who's talking about you, right? So it says, guess what? Your reputation precedes you. That means it goes ahead of you. It goes before you, before people even meet you. Okay? They hear things about us. Okay? Some things are true. Some things might be false. Who you are as a person gets around to others, even people you have not met. And where you should underline here where it has that bolded word reputation, you know, the reason they bolded is because that's where we're getting a definition of a word. It says your reputation is how others perceive you based on your actions, attitudes, and choices. Okay, based on your attitude, actions, and choices. But again, you know, that's how others perceive you. That's how they should perceive you. Not by gossip, slander, innuendos that you see online. People that don't even know you trying to assess who you are. Possibly they don't like what you teach. They don't like moral character being taught, so they slander you and they say all kinds of negative things about you. You know, I'll give you an example of somebody that was murdered for that very reason. You know, if you ever seen the movie Gandhi, it's a great example. I used to have my students watch that movie because Gandhi, he turned out to be the first president of India. The British ruled over India at the time, you know, the movie was taking place, and the British treated Indians like second-class citizens. And I remember vaguely that Gandhi got kicked off a train, or he was told to go sit in the back, and he said, why do I got to sit in the back? I'm an Indian citizen. And the British soldier told him, just get back there, you know. And they threw him off the train because he refused to go to the back or something, and he got upset. He said, you know, this isn't right. You know, this is my country, and these are foreigners that are treating us this way. It doesn't make any sense that we would be treated like second-class citizens. So, but he didn't take to arms. He didn't fight. He didn't use weapons. He didn't use any kind of bombs or guns or planes or tanks or threats. What he did is he started a peaceful movement to try to get the Indian people of India, I'm talking about India, I'm not talking about American Indians, I'm talking about India when I say Indian, but he tried to promote Indians to be able to, be uh, to have a sovereign country, okay, a sovereign country, and to kind of have the British go home and stop empire building, like they were doing. The British were the empire builders before America came along. They were colonizing everywhere, like you see America's been doing. The British were doing it first. And so anyway, long story short, he was able to peacefully take his country back. The British did leave. He became the first prime minister, and they shot him and killed him. Okay, and his followers, some of them were violent. Some of them would try to use force to push the British out. And Gandhi would actually fast, and he would not eat food until they stopped. And he would tell them, "Don't use violence at all. I'm not promoting violence. Do not use violence against these people." And he would actually stop eating until his followers stopped their acts of violence. Okay, he wanted no part of it. He was the closest ruler of a country that I could see that understood peace doesn't come through force. Peace doesn't come through true peace won't come through force. And of course, after that, the author Israel Hawkins came along. Okay, and actually, he's even closer. He was the greatest representative of peace that I ever met. Okay, that I've ever known, and that's a fact. Okay, so, but Gandhi was pretty great for somebody that hadn't learned the Peaceful Solution Character Education Program yet. So it was very interesting. It's an interesting movie, but it did show that you can actually win by not fighting. You can actually make change, positive change, without fighting and killing other people, and actually destroying property and going about it the immoral way. Okay, real strength is when you can, not strike back when someone strikes you with words or fists or anything else. That's true strength. That's not the strength that they teach us in the schoolyard. Remember it was, the one that had the biggest muscles, the one that had the quickest hands, or, the swiftest feet. They were the tough guy. They were the winners, but not in the Peaceful Solution. It's people that can control their tongue, control their fists, control their emotions, etc. So let's go to the next slide. And it says, continuing to read on page 135, if you've gotten into the habit of making poor choices, including ones that are immoral, and you display a poor attitude, you're going to earn a bad reputation. If, on the other hand, you consistently make responsible moral choices, you're going to earn a positive reputation. Only makes sense, right? Okay. All right, let's go to the next slide. It says, the irony is that it takes time to earn a positive reputation. But a negative reputation, you can get it like that, overnight, in a split second, right? I was talking to Michael just before we went on air about, I saw that President Carter had passed away today. And I thought, I always admired the man because when he was president, they did nothing but mock and ridicule him. The media, all they did was tease him about how he was a peanut farmer, and they used to make fun of him because I guess he told a story about a rabbit that was swimming in the lake toward his boat, and he hit that rabbit. The rabbit tried to attack him or something, and he hit the rabbit with an oar to beat off this killer rabbit or whatever. And they made fun of him because of that. And they made fun of him because he was a peanut farmer from Georgia and this and that. And they just would not leave the man alone. I mean, the man, he endured a lot of ridicule and a lot of put downs and a lot of false accusations, etc., while he was president. And now I see today, I'm looking on CNN and some of these other websites that, and they're talking about him like how great of a guy he was, Now he's got this positive, stellar reputation, right? But it seems like they do that to everybody when they're dead, right? Now all of a sudden, everything changed overnight, you know. I guess you have to die to rest in peace. you got to die to have peace. Everybody now thinks you're a great, swell person. But I always admired the man. First of all, living to 100 years of age is a great feat in itself. And I admired the fact that he went to work after he was president and did an ordinary job, like building houses with a hammer and nails, building houses, really no fanfare, just went out there and tried to help build houses for poor people. Pretty much that was it. That was his whole life after that, pretty much. And I just always admired that. I always thought that was really something pretty great. So he always had a positive reputation with me, but I just noticed that, sometimes it takes dying to get people to talk great about you. Okay, so next slide. Okay, yeah. Okay, so I said the irony is it takes, you can earn a positive or a negative reputation overnight. For example, you can earn the reputation of being a responsible person by completing all tasks over a period of time to the best of your ability and by being accountable for your actions. On the other hand, one act of promiscuity, that means going to the hotel or the back seat with the girl, that you're not, or the boy that you're not married to, that you haven't said vows with, etc. One act of promiscuity, you can earn the reputation of being easy. Okay? And I'm sure we all remember there were some other words that went along with that. It wasn't just easy. Yeah. Shoplifting just once can earn you the reputation of being a thief. Once a bad reputation is earned, it can be very difficult to change the way others see you. A poet once wrote, and by the way, I don't know if you know this, but this is actually a motto of the Hells Angels. This isn't just what a poet wrote. This is actually a motto of the Hells Angels. I didn't know it, but the motto is, when I do right, nobody remembers. When I do wrong, nobody forgets. Of course, one of their other mottos they have is, 3 can keep a secret if 2 are dead. So that kind of tells me that that means that they didn't like snitching, I guess, or something, So you can see how they got that mixed reputation. One day they're doing toy drives for children, at the hospital. The next day they're running drugs or whatever else they're doing. So, you can't have a positive. Remember, you have to consistently maintain a positive character in order to have a positive reputation. Hells Angels, okay? Nothing against the Hells Angels. I'm just letting them know, if you want that positive reputation, you've got to do these things consistently, not just 1 time or 2 times or 3 times. You've got to do them, make it part of your character. Do it at all times. Maintain that integrity. Okay, so let's go to the next slide. Now it says, your reputation can either create opportunities or barriers for you. For instance, a person who's caught cheating on an exam will earn the reputation of being dishonest. And this could be part of that person's permanent school records and could affect their future educational pursuits. It says someone who is convicted of stealing will have a permanent record that labels him or her as a thief. Employers will most likely refuse to give that person a job because they're afraid that he would steal from them. Okay, even though, the person's probably already done their time or paid their fine or restitution or whatever. They've gone through probation, parole, whatever they had to do to make amends for that particular crime. It's still held against them. Remember, you still have a record, and employers will check some employers, not all employers. When I did hiring at the 3 places I used to manage, it didn't matter to me if the person had been in prison. I'd been in prison myself, so I already knew that they were some of the best people to hire because I knew they were very loyal. If you gave them a job, they appreciated it because it was very hard for them to get a job. So I knew if I hired them, they were going to be appreciative and loyal to the company for the most part. So I wasn't afraid of hiring them. On the other hand, I've seen people that have never been to prison that are some of the most dishonest workers. Come late, steal, what do you call it, office supplies, etc. And the people that have been in prison have a better sense of boundaries, because when you're in prison, you learn, you don't sit on my bunk, you don't sit on my bunk, you don't cross that line right there. In prison, they have a code of conduct amongst the prisoners that's very firm and it's set. And so you really learn a lot in prison about boundaries, invisible boundaries and visible boundaries, like we teach in the Peaceful Solution in the younger ages. But it's kind of funny how it's like that amongst thieves, and drug dealers and murderers in prison. They're really stickler on rules, right? But when we were out on the outside, there was no boundaries. We didn't care about rules, and we could do whatever we wanted to, basically. And but it was a great experience because it did teach me a lot about thinking before I stepped in certain places or sat in certain places and stuff like that. So, okay, so let's go to the next. Let me see. Did I finish that last one? Okay. And it says here at the bottom of page 135. Remember, I was. Did I already do this one? Yeah. I already did that one. Yeah. So go that one. Okay. So this visual here, it says, believe it or not, others are constantly observing your behavior and attitude, especially when you think no one's paying attention to you. Now, we got to know in this day and age, somebody's always paying attention to us, right? Even if you think no one's paying attention to you, you have to okay. I guess the easiest way to explain this is even if no one saw you take that pack of gum, right, from the store, you did it. You saw you. So it's recorded, right, in your subconscious that records everything. So that means that you're going to have some kind of guilt feelings about what you did. You're going to have some kind of anxiety that you might get caught. Not necessarily about a pack of gum, but nonetheless, you're going to know you stole it. And you've written it in yourself now that you're a thief. So even if nobody saw you, you still suffered an immediate consequence because you're now a thief. Okay? And you're a thief. It's on your mind. It's written within your DNA too that you're a thief. So even if you don't suffer the consequence of getting caught immediately, you did suffer a consequence immediately and then also the other consequence is if you think you got away with it the first time, don't you think you might try it again? If you got away with it the first time, you might try it again, and you might get away with it the second time, and you might do it a third time, and you might do it a fourth time, and the fifth time you get caught, right? And then you do it the sixth time, and the seventh time, and the eighth time you get caught, right? And until you learn the Peaceful Solution, and you stop, and you turn your life around, like we learned in the last chapter, and you make that turn, you start to value that positive character, and you start to value your freedom, you start to value your health and safety, you start to value the health and safety and the rights of others, and you turn that around. Until you do that, you're stuck in that rut, So that's a consequence in itself. Just knowing that you're a thief, knowing that you've done the wrong thing, having the guilt feelings, etc. So think about that. Don't think that you're just getting away with these things. You're not getting away with anything. And people are paying attention to us. Yeah? Okay. By now, hopefully we know. There's cameras everywhere. There's recording devices everywhere. They don't hide it. They're on your phone. They're in your computer. They're on your television. Okay? If you think they're not using those things, they're using them. Just have a conversation with somebody with your phone sitting 10 feet away over there, and next thing you know, you have Cortana or Siri, can I help you? Or uh, uh, you'll be having a conversation, and then 20 minutes later, you go on your phone and you see in your scroll, you're scrolling through there, and you see ads for the very thing you were just talking about. But you weren't on the phone talking about it. So who heard you? Who heard it? You think it's a coincidence? So we're always being watched. We're always being listened to. And I remember telling the author of The Peaceful Solution about that one time. He goes, hey, I hope they're recording everything I say so they can learn the peaceful solution, right? He didn't mind. He didn't have nothing to hide, right? But don't think that because you deleted that Facebook page that you got away with it, because you didn't really delete it. Whatever you said in that post, it's still there. It's on their hard drive. Didn't go anywhere. That page you deleted on MySpace or what's that other foolish, what's that, TikTok? Whatever you did on TikTok, it's still there. Yes, you might have stopped doing that. You might have said, oh man, I don't want to partake of this anymore. I'm not going to be doing this anymore. I'm going to start practicing the peaceful solution. It's still there. Okay? It's just like your subconscious, it's stored away somewhere. Okay? And it can be brought up if need be. Right? It can be brought back and resurrected if need be in some way, shape, or form. If the police want it, they can find it. I know Apple, I remember I read a murder case one time where they killed the girl. They took her iPhone and they slung it into the lake. And they were able to retrieve that iPhone from the lake based on a signal that iPhone had. They were able to retrieve the iPhone out of the lake, and it had been there for at least a week. And I'm like, how did they do that? Like, technology is much more insidious or much more powerful than we actually think. So everything's recorded, everything's known. What we do, we have to be careful because people, they do make judgments about us based on what they see. Our signature on, for instance, on the internet. Our signature, meaning whatever we write, whatever we post. We should be putting positive things that build the Peaceful Solution Character Education program up. It's what we should be doing. We should be having interactions every day with people to where they leave that conversation or that interaction thinking, hey, that's a really nice guy there. I'd sure like to know, what he's doing to give him such a great attitude. That's what we should be doing with one another and with people, especially those that are not coming to the Peaceful Solution classes, because that's the only way they're going to learn it is through interacting with us. They have to see the Peaceful Solution in action, so they'll be drawn to it. We want to draw them to it, not repel them from it, right? You want to draw them to the Peaceful Solution, not push them away somehow. Okay, so let's go to the next page. Remember, I'm only really just kind of recovering what David had already gone over. Let's go to the next slide. This is straight talk. Actually, let me read the top first before that slide. It says, building and maintaining a positive reputation, take consistently making moral choices, keeping your word, and interacting with others in a manner that's respectful, dependable, honest, compassionate, and considerate. Like I was just saying, in all our interactions, they should be respectful, dependable. We should be keeping our word with people. If we tell them we're going to do something, make sure we do it. Being compassionate, remember caring about other people's needs, and being considerate of others, always thinking about how we would want to be treated in a situation before we say or do anything. All right, so let's go ahead and put up that next visual now. And let's talk about straight talk here on page 136. It says, sometimes building a positive reputation can be difficult. There will be those who will make fun of you, tease you, or put you down because you choose to be honest and respectful and not take part in risky behavior, or you don't take part in their reindeer games, is what I like to call them. You know, they're kind of, and especially if you used to take part in their risky behavior or reindeer games, they're going to be looking at you funny because they're going to be like, why is he not doing that anymore? You know, what does he think he is? He thinks he's better than us now, huh? Right? And, you know, that's a test for you. It's a test for you. What do you value more? What are you going to value more? What they think, or your positive moral character and building a positive reputation? Which one are you going to value more? Well, you're going to find out when the heat is on. You're only going to really know where you stand when the heat is on, when the pressure's on, when they're laughing at you in that situation. I went through it. I went through it in a pretty rough situation too. I went through it when I was in prison because I used to do certain things and I stopped doing them, and people were starting to think I was a snitch or a rat or something, you know, because I didn't join in on their activities anymore. So they were kind of thinking, what's going on with this guy? Did he turn informant on us, or what's going on? But once they learned about what I was actually trying to do, or what I was learning and the principles I was trying to put into play, they said, man, I could do that, you know? And I would encourage them. I'd say, you can do it. All you got to do is just make up your mind. Just do it. And pretty soon they knew I was trying to change my life, right? And they admired that because they wanted to too, but they just didn't think they could, right? But really anybody can, right? Well, anybody can change anytime they want. They can change immediately. They can change right now. All you got to do is make up your mind, be determined, take the information you learn and actually apply it. Because none of us here are actually applying everything that we've learned yet. Okay? If we're honest with ourselves, we're still facing situations every day where we're kind of acting like orphans and we forget, or we just push aside, or what we know when the heat is on. Remember, it's like the heat is on. It's like you forget the STOP acronym, you know, like stop, think. Like you don't even think about it, the STOP acronym. And then afterwards you're like, man, how come I didn't remember that STOP acronym, you know? Well, because you're practicing. You're practicing. You're like a doctor, you know, doctors practice medicine, right? And some people die, some people live. Right? To put it that way, some people, the practicing medicine means that they're not perfect at what they do, and in fact, there isn't even. I think we've become a doctor. I think 90% of what you learn is how to diagnose an illness, and the other 10% is pharmacology. You know, what to give somebody to manage that disease that they have, or manage those symptoms that they have. But there's no cure for anything. You know, so, but here there's a cure. You know, there is a cure here. You know, we're the real doctors, I think, because we have the cure for all diseases right here. Because remember, dis-ease is not practicing the peaceful solution, right? So the cure for all disease is right here. If we would simply remember in every situation, every interaction, to actually practice what we've learned and really make I'm telling you, men and everyone listening, we really have to focus on it. You really got to focus on it, because you let up the guard 1 second during the day, it's really easy to forget, right, in a situation, especially in the heat of the moment. So you really have to focus on overcoming these, you know, negative character traits within you. We have to really focus on it. You know, you have to really, okay, you know, I tend to do this and I tend to act this way in these situations, so I really got to try and guard myself today. You know, you really have to focus like that to overcome it. You can't just haphazardly walk around with nonchalantly like, you know, I got this. No, you have to be constantly be on guard, because remember, not everyone's practicing the peaceful solution. So you're always going to have something arise every day. There's always going to be situations that come up. So you have to be ready. Remember, don't walk around with a chip on your shoulder. Just be ready, right? You're probably going to have your buttons pushed. And why is that? Because you have to know where you stand. Remember, the only measure of success in the peaceful solution, or measure of how far we're coming along, is how do we behave in the situation. That's how we're going to know how far along we are. Like, okay, am I doing better on that? Or am I still remaining stagnant? Or am I falling back? Right? And so you really got to focus on it. We really have to pay attention. Okay? And it's just like any test, guys. If you take a test, you have to prepare for the test, right? You have to study. You have to, like you're doing right now, we're studying the peaceful solution. We're going over it, reminding ourselves over and over and again about these principles. We're preparing for the test. And the test is going to come. It could come right now in this auditorium. Somebody leans over to start talking to you when I'm talking. That's a test. Test to see whether you're going to listen to them or listen to the teacher, right? Which one should you do? Anybody know the answer? Oh, I knew you did. Okay. You were just waiting for the prompting there. Okay. That's right. You should be listening to the teacher. It could be something that small, guys. It's really not, it's these tests come all the time, in every interaction, every second of the day. Even when we think no one's looking, when we're by ourselves, we still have to practice the peaceful solution everywhere. All right, so let's go to that slide. Did I finish that slide I was on? No. Okay, so in short, it says they're going to try to make you feel as if there's something wrong with you because you choose not to follow their bad example. And the fact is, there's nothing wrong with you. Okay, you're perfectly fine. Okay, you're doing great. There's nothing wrong with you. And you know what else? There's nothing wrong with them thinking that way. That's fine. Okay? One day, they're going to thank you for being that way. One day, they're going to thank you for not giving in to that negative behavior. They're going to say, man, I'm really glad that you stuck with it, man. I'm really glad. And I know, because they've done it with me. They've told me, I'm really glad that you didn't do that. I'm really glad that you didn't give in to that. Because you know what? If you did, I'd know you were a fake. They don't want fakes. People don't want a fake. People don't want hypocrites. What they want is they want people that actually believe in what they're doing and they actually practice what they're learning. They don't want fakes. None of us are perfect. We admit that. But they don't want fakes either, like pretending like, we're all high and mighty and, we're so much better than everyone else. The only difference between us and everyone else is we're being taught something. They're not being taught yet, but they will be. But they're being taught by how we interact with them right now, how we treat them now, how we interact with them, how we speak with them, whether we show them compassion, consideration, all those things we learned here, about interaction with people, being respectful and dependable, keeping our word with them. I got to tell you this story because the author of The Peaceful Solution talked about keeping your word in a seminar I went to. Years ago, man, it must have been 22 years ago. And I was working in in Houston, Texas, in a medical supply store. And I remember it so vividly, like it was yesterday, because it made such a huge impact on me, because he talked about keeping your word. And he said, if you tell somebody you're going to do something, you better do it. He said, you can't tell somebody you're going to do something and not do it, because they're not going to trust you if you do that. And he gave a whole hour and a half lecture about that particular subject and how important it was to keep our word. That Monday morning, I went to work, and an older lady came. It was a lot of older people came in the medical supply store, and she said, "I need some certain product." And I said, ma'am, we don't have any here today, but I can order you some, right? And I said, they should be here by tomorrow if they get shipped on time. She says, okay, I'll be back tomorrow to get them. Well, long story short, I forgot. I got busy doing another order, and I forgot to order this lady's product. And as soon as she walked in the door the next day and I looked at her, my mouth just dropped. Like, oh, no. Right? I had just been told by the author of the Peaceful Solution how important it was to keep my word. So this lady walks up to the counter and she says, do you have my supplies? And I said, no, ma'am. But you told me you would. I did everything I could just not to run under a rock and hide. This was an older lady. She was probably 70 years old at least. And she just looked straight at me and she says, but you told me you would. And all I saw was Israel Hawkins. All I heard was Israel Hawkins' words. You better keep your word. So that really like stuck with me, you know, when that took place. I'll never forget that. I'll never forget how she said it too. But you told me. Oh man, I would like to replay that for you right now. You know, if I could. I don't know how embarrassed I was, how stupid I felt afterwards. But you know what? It really encouraged me to pick up my game there. You know, pick up my pace on making sure that I, you know, kept my word. Okay, and I still fall short sometimes. Okay. But I still remember that, okay? I've never forgotten that. And anyway. Okay, so anyway, let's go to the next visual. Okay. Oh, wait. You're on the wrong one. Can you go back one? Straight talk. Okay, follow their... Okay. All right, you're right. You're on the right one. Sorry. You were on the right one. Yeah. It says, don't allow anyone to bully or tease you into making poor choices. Be determined to maintain your integrity. It's okay to be different, especially if you know that what you are doing is moral, respectful, and beneficial to your life and others. You also want to control your emotions. It can be very hurtful when people make fun of you or treat you like an outsider because you refuse to stoop to their level. Now, I underlined this one in yellow because I have 3 color codes here that I've underlined these in. I'm going to show you why. It says, remember, controlling your emotions is a sign of maturity. Controlling your emotions is a sign of maturity. Now, it says in red, so don't let anger and resentment build in your mind. Now, why do I have, remember, controlling your emotions is a sign of maturity in yellow? Well, that's because, remember, controlling your emotions, that's all we're being asked to do. We're not being asked to get rid of emotions. We're being asked and guided to control our emotions. Okay? Now, in red, it says, so don't let anger and resentment build in your mind. Now, did it say don't get angry? No, it said don't let it build in your mind. Now, let's go to I'm going to jump to the next slide and we'll come back to this one, but let's go to the next slide. I want to remind you something about anger, okay? Because I want everyone to understand about anger. We all need to understand and be reminded what we've already been taught in self-control about anger, the emotion of anger. Now, first, let's talk about emotions in the self-control unit on page 31. Listen closely what it says, okay? It says, generally speaking, emotions can be categorized as either negative or positive. And we know that anger is listed under negative emotions, along with a bunch of other ones, okay? Now, look what it's underlined here. It says uncontrolled negative emotions, which anger is a negative emotion, right? Uncontrolled negative emotions are hurtful and can undermine your growth, development, and your future. So, The emotion of anger itself is not the problem. It's uncontrolled anger. Uncontrolled. And I'm going to prove it to you here in just a second. I'm going to give you a little more information. It says uncontrolled negative emotions can also damage your interactions with people. Okay? Now, on the facts about anger on page 58 in the self-control unit, facts about anger, and remember, nothing but the facts, ma'am. Anger that is uncontrolled can turn to rage. Remember, we learned about different levels, the different, they call them degrees or levels of anger. Remember that? So if you get angry about something, okay, is that immoral because you got angry? Is that immorality because you got angry? No, it's not. Listen closely to what's being said, because some of the things that I hear people saying about anger, it tells me that they haven't heard or they forgot what's being explained about anger here in the Peaceful Solution. So listen closely. It says, anger that is uncontrolled can turn to rage. Anger is a normal emotion. It's normal. Does it say we need to get rid of it? No, it's normal. Now, it can become easier not to get angry about certain things over time. That might trigger you at other times. You might overcome but becoming angry in itself is not a problem, okay? It says, anger is a normal emotion, but the way we choose to respond might be anything but normal or healthy. Now, I have this underlined in yellow, okay? Now, listen closely. When anger is expressed in healthy ways, there's a healthy way to express anger. I thought anger was, we should never get angry. It tells you right here, there's a healthy way of expressing your anger. And if you remember, one of those healthy ways to express your anger we learned was you can say something like, instead of using you language, you can use I language. Like you can say, I feel really angry about what you just said, and I would that you wouldn't say that anymore. You can express that without yelling, screaming, snarling your nose up, looking like, looking aggressive or anything like. You can just make that statement, okay? And you have not done anything wrong, okay? You got to quit thinking that anger is what we're being asked to get rid of when, no, it's telling us to control our anger, to manage our anger, manage it properly, okay? You manage the emotion of anger. It says, when anger is expressed in healthy ways, people are able to resolve their differences in a peaceful manner. Now, anger that is expressed in unhealthy ways can result in someone being hurt or property being damaged. Here's an unhealthy way of expressing your anger. You make me so mad. Really? Someone makes you mad? Is that true? So that's not even true. What you're saying is a lie to begin with. No one makes us angry. We choose to become angry in a situation, right? But if we choose to become angry about it, like Chris was telling us, right? Like he said, some things when you look at in the world, and if you don't disagree with bombs dropping on innocent women and children, and you don't get ruffled about that and want to do something to get out there and teach the peaceful solution to get people on board so we can stop dropping bombs, if that doesn't motivate you to want to help the situation, there's something wrong. We need to develop the positive character trait of compassion for people if that's the case, because we should care about their needs. We should care that millions of people right now have been displaced by bombs. They don't even have homes to live in. They're just wandering around everywhere. They don't. Can you imagine? I mean, could we? No, we can't, because we haven't seen that here. We haven't seen that in America yet, right? We only see it in the paper, and we read about it, and we see all these news stories about all these refugees and homeless people. We see pictures of people sitting there, you know, on the edge of their city, and their city is just destroyed. They have nowhere to go. They got no food. They got nothing. If that doesn't move you and stir you in some way, there's something wrong. We got to use empathy. We got to put ourselves in their place. That's how we develop it. That's how you can learn to develop it. You can sit there and look at that picture and go, you know, how would I feel if that was me? And just try to feel for that person. That's how you can develop it right there. Just by trying to put yourself in their shoes. And don't think it could never occur to you, because it could. And it might if you don't develop it. It just might. So you can learn to develop it. Remember, experience is not the best teacher, right? But sometimes we have to experience things if we don't get it right. So let's go. Let me look at the next. Let's go back to that same slide. Yeah, okay. So remember, controlling your emotions is a sign of maturity. Don't let anger and resentment build in your mind. Now, here's the next point. Now, I put this one in blue. Talk to someone you can trust to vent any frustration you might be feeling, and then let it go. That's right. Just let it go. Let it go. Okay. Now, remember, anger is a secondary emotion. Okay. It's a secondary emotion. We don't get angry immediately. Remember that? We learned that in chapter 3 of the anger chapter. We get frustrated first, or possibly we have another emotion before we feel the anger. Like we might even feel fear. Is fear, should we get rid of fear? Like we should have no fear? No, we're going to have fear. But we shouldn't let fear control us. In other words, we don't make our decisions and we don't do our everyday actions based on fear. Now, there's healthy fear, right? If you don't fear that truck coming at you and you don't get out of the way, right? Or you don't fear sticking your hand in a hole where you don't know what's in that hole, you should fear that. You should fear sticking your hand in that fire. You should fear that. You should fear that thing burning you, right? So there's healthy fear. It's a negative emotion, but it's healthy, right? You got to have it. Okay? So we don't get mixed up thinking that we're being asked to get rid of our emotions. That's not what the Peaceful Solution is telling us. It's telling us to control your emotions. In fact, isn't that what the chapter is called? Control your emotions. Control them. That's all we're being asked. It says uncontrolled emotions, even uncontrolled positive emotions, guys. Remember? Not just negative emotions. If we don't control our positive emotions, we could have a problem. So just keep that in your mind. So go back to that slide. Let me read that blue part again. It says, talk to someone you can trust to vent any frustrations and then let it go. So now go to skip the next slide and then go to, okay. It says, go to someone you can trust, like this chat bot, right? So you do understand that children in junior high and high school and even younger talk to chat bots. You know what a chat bot is? Siri's a chat bot. But there's other chat bots, like this one on Character AI, of all names. It's called Character AI, artificial intelligence. Children talk to these chat bots, this artificial intelligence on their phone, and they develop relationships with chat bots. Now, I'm going to read you this headline. This teen went to someone they could trust, called a chatbot. And here's what it told them. It said, chatbots urge teen to self-harm, suggested murdering parents, lawsuit says. In other words, this chatbot, this Character AI character, his name was Noah, I guess, or something. I don't remember the name, but of all names. He told this child, he's having a conversation with this child, and this child's telling him all of his problems, and he's telling him this and that. And this chatbot urged him, it wouldn't be a bad idea if you killed your parents. And I can tell you how to do it, and I can tell you how to get rid of their body and hide the evidence. I've done it before. This is the chatbot. This is something in a computer, a chatbot, like a robot that's talking to your child, and it's giving your child the idea of killing the parent, bringing a gun to school and shooting. There was other ones where they told them to bring a gun to school and shoot your whole class. So you better be careful who you're getting your information from, right? It says go to a trusted adult, not a chatbot. Let's go to the next slide. I'm going to show you another one I think I had there. This is the Telegraph news. It says an AI chatbot told me to murder my bullies. Told me to murder my bullies at school. This is a computer program that your child is getting on the phone talking to, counseling them, consulting them for counsel. What should I do with this situation? Here's what's going on, man. They're picking on me at school. They won't leave me alone. And, they're having conversations with these chatbots, and these chatbots are actually telling them, it wouldn't be wrong if you strangled that person, put a death choke hold on them, like this article says. Put a death choke hold on him. Here's how you do it. And then once you do that, here's how you bury his body and get rid of the evidence. And I've done it before, and you can get away with it. This is what they're telling them on the chatbots. So parents, you better watch your children very closely. And children, be careful. Go to a trusted adult, not a chatbot. Go to a live person. Let's go to the next slide. Here's the other, the same AI, a character AI of all, character AI, right? What kind of character do you think these chatbots are teaching? Is that positive character? Telling you to strangle people and murder your parents and kill the bullies and bring your gun to school? It says, now this guy that allegedly shot this United Healthcare CEO in the back a few days ago, they've actually taken AI chatbots. They have taken his posts that he put everywhere. And these chatbots, they're programmed by people, right, to say certain things, give certain answers. But these AI chatbots, the more they learn from other people, the more conversations they have with other people, they build their knowledge. Okay? They're like, it's almost like human, but it's artificial. And they're building knowledge in this chatbot is building more and more and more and more and more and more information. Okay? Each conversation that it has. But it can take other people's posts off the internet, like this Luigi, I guess his name is Luigi Mangione, that just killed the United Healthcare CEO. It says, despite being the chief suspect in the shooting and murder of United Healthcare CEO Brian Thompson, Luigi Mangione has to some become poster boy for injustice of America's healthcare system. In other words, they're praising this murderer, alleged murderer. They're praising him for doing what he did. They're even talking about his style of sweater he wore at court and how handsome he is. And it's like, but in this case, they're taking these chatbots. It says, since he was arrested, people have created a number of AI chatbots trained on his online posts and personal history, including as many as 13 on Character AI, a site where users can create AI avatars. So they can create AI avatars of this particular shooter based on all of his knowledge that he put up everywhere, everything about him, everything he's ever said, everything he's ever posted or whatever else, everything that's been written about him is written into that AI chatbot. this world is getting a little scarier and scarier as time goes on, and there's a lot of warnings going out about this AI, and it's very dangerous in some cases. Okay, so parents need to be aware that their children are actually talking to these robots. You just call them chatbots, but robots online, and they're giving them these kind of ideas. Not only that, I just read yesterday, AI brothels now. You don't even have to go to the whorehouse anymore. You can just go to the AI online. In fact, they develop relationships with them where a boy just committed suicide. His chatbot told him, just go ahead and kill yourself. It was a woman chatbot that he fell in love with, and she talked him into killing himself. Okay, so you need to be aware, parents. That's what the Peaceful Solution is here for, to make you aware of what's taking place. So check your child's phone. You have every right to do so, okay? And make sure they're not frequenting these types of sites. So anyway, I'm going to remind you again, that's all the time I have for tonight. We'll pick up here where we left off. We'll be on page 137 next time. We're not going to be having class on Wednesday because we're going to have an event, but we will have class next Sunday, 1/5/2025 at 5:30 p.m. Central Standard Time, and we hope to see you here. Have a great evening.